hope everyone had an excellent week. I had an interesting one, and my son turns 21 soon, so I am working my butt off to make that a thing. I think your 21st has to be a pretty big deal, right? Well, sort of. I got engaged on my 21st, and yeah, it's now looking even more insane with my oldest boy. Um, Interestingly, he's away at his partner's for this week, and I won't see him until that day. So this means I get plenty of time to sneak around and pretend like I know what I'm doing. Jeez, I never even thought that I'd have a 21-year-old at all. Like someone had have asked me when I was younger, I didn't even think I'd end up being a mum. And now that's the biggest feature of everything I do, my every single moment. Um, for instance, today I went to work, went shopping, got things for my daughter, and came home to you guys. So yeah, my life definitely isn't what I thought it would be, but I'm all thankful for it. Okay, tonight, what do we got? We have Jacinta Price is fact checked. What did Tim Wilson do that was so disgraceful? Better ties with the New Zealand and Australia. An expelled Liberal takes over the party. Rupert knew he lied. When Tucker became too much for Rupert. Jim Chalmers takes down Angus Taylor. Story time that's normally filled with love has been met with some very hateful people. Good news for those in need of medication. The Mark Latham double down, and then the social media shutdown for the right-wing media. Now, in amongst that, there is something that I'm going to add a side note to with that social media shutdown. So, I think I'm coming down with something. I'm not exactly sure. Okay, let's start off with Jacinta Price. Now, Jacinta Price isn't known for being the most intelligent person. She takes her money where she can get it. She's getting paid a lot of money on the No campaign, and quite frankly, it's serving her and her alone. She has essentially told the people that she's supposed to represent, well, not. Um, it's quite disgraceful, but what can you do? All right, you could vote her out, but again, people have to be on to the grift. Okay, here we go. So, what did she do, and then how did she do it? Okay. Jacinta Price's office dodged questions from fact checkers, deflecting the No campaign headquarters, which ultimately admitted that it had been basing misleading claims in key campaign material on social media posts by unnamed activists, leaving the No campaign once again debunked. This isn't new for Jacinta, but I would like to say that there's hope that eventually the money runs out and she's going to see sentence. But I I think there's too much money in it for her to do what she's doing, and I think that that's by design. Keep in mind that this is the feature, not a bug of how this works, as far as I can tell. So when this all came about, the emails that were shared were really misleading. So this is what it had come up. Email misleads with secret voice documents claim. The No Campaign email from Senator Price. Secret government documents have revealed the real agenda behind the voice referendum, including plans to change the flag, force Australians to pay reparations in Indigenous people. But the email to the No Campaign supporters is misleading and misrepresents the document in question. What Senator Price referred to as bombshell documents are in fact 13 minutes from regional dialogue consultations, events held in 2016 and 2017. So to keep in mind, this is long before any voice was proposed. So this misleading statement right from the jump should have been, if you will, disclosed. But again, if you're a right winger, the whole story isn't important. They have to have this level of, I will just tell you what you think you need to know to make you hate something that you don't understand for reasons that I feel like that I got money for. And that's basically how they do it. They turn everything that they've got into some sort of, how can I spin this to my advantage? And granted, a lot of the time, left-wing people do this too. But it's always funny that the left wing kind of dobs himself in every time. Like, even myself, like, I'll end up going, yeah, okay, this doesn't look great. But yeah, the dialogue consultants events, which are attended by around 1,200 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, were part of the national consultation process. How to best recognise the Australians in the Constitution. So that would have been from a follow-up from the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which we've spoken about regularly. This isn't like a new thing. So in that tells you that she's used genuine notes and then misconstrued them into what the voice actually is and how it will be enshrined in our Constitution. I regularly upload the misleading parts and then the fact-checking parts surrounding this. No, there's no indication that they're going to do even a third of these things. But there definitely will be changes, particularly in how we handle our Indigenous communities. After all, that is the point. The point is to be more respectful to a community in which we have systemically profiled and given racial horribleness to. There's no other way to put it. It is horrendous, our treatment of our First Nations people. Still today, the incarceration rates are quite apparent. So, for instance, someone steals a can of drink in the middle of Brisbane, cool, they're let off with a fine. You do it in Darwin and you're an Indigenous person, that's jail time, that's juvie. You see the very garnered difference in the way that that's handled. These are very real moments that you're taking in. And how do you know that? Because you read these stories time and time again. The incarceration rates are just one of many tools at government disposal to keep Indigenous people at a disadvantage. And it's quite clear with defunding regional areas where they reside is also another. That is by proxy racism. And then when you go in and you're like, okay, do you have clean water for everybody? No. Northern Territory looking right at you. Or let's say, for instance, is the mining company cleaning up the area of where they've just mined and that's not running into their waterways. Yeah, WA, you're in part of that shit show too. There is no doubt in my mind that we still carry a systemic racist view on how we handle these communities. Oh yeah, but that leads me into my next part of that. When there's nothing to do for these children and they're when you don't hand them any job prospects or any educational prospects, you don't even give them the right to clean water. And then, you just sort of leave things as they are. And then their health is at like serious issues. Uh, their suicide rates are massive too. Um, then you're like, oh, well, the youth bunk up. Okay. What were they supposed to do? You defunded their communities. There was nothing for these people to do. We talk about this regularly. How we treat our youth is how they're going to end out. So if what you're doing is finding repeated reasons to kick these kids, and that's what you were doing, you were repeatedly making sure that they were never going to get out. Oh yeah, but wait, you hold one university place for them in each university for free if they can get there. If they could get the right education that was funded correctly in, say, Darwin, to the best ability possible, and you gave them the best possible outcome. Yeah, see, it doesn't look like you're really handing them anything nice or special, does it? It looks like that we've been a total asswipe. So if anyone comes at me with, I think that we shouldn't vote for The Voice, why don't we ask them what they want? Instead of telling them whether or not they can have alcohol, or whether or not who comes in and out of their communities, or whether or not we mine the land, strip it, and then tell them, hey, all that water contamination, you have to deal with that now. Oh yeah, no, that just poisons your children, fine. This would not happen in a major city. There is a reason for that. A reason, and it's a disgraceful one. So if Jacinta Price wants to sell out her own community, cool. But I will fight her at every given freaking moment. She will not rest while I hear her say something disingenuous about what this means. We are a community that can actually do something positive to change the nation. We can be the better human that walks around and says, we hear you and we want to help. Here's the thing, they want to help themselves too. So let's help them do that by enriching them with the voice to make sure they are heard in their way. Not in the way we want them to be heard, in the way they want to be heard. Because I can tell you, everybody has their own language, their own way of connecting to one another. Whether you're speaking like love languages and dialect, those key differences, that culture difference. Let's not play games. We have a definite culture difference here. I'm not, I have not had the same cultural experience as someone from our First Nations people. If I did, the very last thing I would do is be wanting to talk to people that made sure I was oppressed or wiped out of existence, which is every government organization ever. And now we can always say that the left does it better. Sure, that's true. But even they have cocked this up monumentally. History doesn't lie, people do. And the winners always get the best end of that tail. So how bad was it really if even we've acknowledged that it's disgraceful? You sit around and you think, well, if the winner tells the best tale, how come we have such an appalling record of this? It must have been way worse. There's not even like, we're never completely honest about the true awfulness of what we are. And I do believe in that level of self-preservation. But this is not the time to be, doing this self-preservation thing. And this apology that Kevin Rudd did, I acknowledge that. but it didn't do anything to get him progressively forward. And if you understand, Peter Dutton actively walked out on that. And a lot of racists will say, well, they got the apology. Isn't that one okay? No, it's not. Because what did that change in their active everyday communities? It changed nothing. All it did was acknowledge that we did something wrong. What you do when you go forward from that acknowledgement of guilt is that you find something to make it better. The Uluru Statement of the Heart was that. Now, from that Uluru Statement of the Heart become what we are now talking about, the voice. Why does it need to be in the Constitution? Well, we have this odd thing where whenever we add something in or out of the Constitution like this, for some reason you need to ask everybody. But if you want to build a stadium, apparently you just have to get a Liberal Premier in Tasmania that has no idea and then ask Albo to chuck in half, but only attack Albo for it. I'm looking at you guys. That's another weird thing that I've seen lately. Anyway, that's a side note. All right. So, and all the misleading stuff that Jacinta has done, she's not done doing it. And I don't think Lydia Thorpe is going to be helpful. I think that she has tarnished enough of herself, which the Greens always do. They always end up biting off their own noses despite their faces. They're not very good at this stuff. You want to be their friends. My God, you want to be the Greens' friends. Sometimes their policies are bloody bold. But then you look at them and you're like, no, that's not how you're supposed to rock up to Parliament. You're not supposed to be doing those sorts of things. How about you not do that? Stuff like that. All right. Next up, we have a Tim Wilson disgrace. Now, turns out Tim Wilson rocked up to a war memorial. Turns out Tim Wilson is no longer the member for where this war memorial service was taking place. Turns out Zoe Daniels is. And she is on an overseas trip as a correspondent. She is a journalist reporting from some very dangerous overseas issues. So when it came time to lay the wreath, one of her advisors was told to do so. But Tim Wilson seemed to take it upon himself to do it. Let's have a look at how that turned out. Okay. Because Tim Wilson is the constant shit show of everything that they want to be, because, Liberal. This is how they do things. An official for Zoe Daniel clashed with angrily with Tim Wilson after Anzac March service in Melbourne. After Wilson came forward and laid down a wreath, which the MC had just announced would be laid by the representative for Daniels, as she was absent. So he just picked it up and took it all on his own initiative and decided to be the horrible person that he is. And then her advisor actually took umbrage with it. And this is the 10 seconds that was caught in relation to that. Take a listen. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Very inappropriate. Ridiculous.
The federal results on isn't an Anzac Day service in her community.
This is her representative.
All right, how are you?
Very inappropriate. Ridiculous.
The federal results on isn't an Anzac Day service in her community.
This is her representative.
All right, how are you?
Yeah, he got called out for that straight up. I don't think they planned on actually having that filmed, but now it's filmed and now it's all out there. But Tim Wilson looked like the idiot he is and took a role on that wasn't his. And of course, being a Liberal, they've always got to grab the headline. They don't actually have to be productive members of public. They just have to grab a headline. This definitely had that, which is another moment where this has come up. Now, the RSL has had to respond to this because, of course, they did, because they're like, No, this is sort of on our watch, and now we have to respond to what he did. Because this storm in a teacup happens to be part of it. I just wish he was asked to leave the moment that happened, and it didn't grab so many headlines. Regrettable. RSL responds to Tim Wilson, Zoe Daniels wreath wrangle. The Victoria RSL wreath laying dispute involving former Liberal Tim Wilson and standing for Zoe Daniels, the independent who beat him in last year's election, was regrettable but won't overshadow the solemn Anzac Day event. The Liberal members have been privately scathing Wilson's conduct during the ceremony in Melbourne southeast on Sunday. Some claim his behaviour might jeopardise his hopes of winning pre-selection for the federal seat of Goldstein. So he's going to run again. Because they're like this. This is what they do. This is how they get headlines. They do something so ridiculous that they're like, that'll get me into the national spotlight again. I can just usurp that seat again. I think that doing it at something like this is super distasteful, but that's my opinion. I mean, you can have any opinion that you want, but I'm pretty adamant that Anzac Day is not exactly a great place to be doing this sort of thing. It's not a great place for wanting your stunts.
Alice King, Nan, or one other?
No. My phone is, yeah. But the former politician has defended his conduct, saying the RSL volunteer asked him to hold. I'm just going to message my husband to call my mother. That's what just happened. Yeah. Okay. Okay, where am I at? I lost myself. That distracted me. I thought I had do not disturb on it. Apparently not. Okay, but the former politician defended his conduct, saying that the RSL volunteer asked him to hold a wreath paid for by his successor. But because the Till MP was not in attendance, he added that he shared the assortment of flowers once Daniel's representative identified himself. Asked why he didn't let go of the wreath. So this is the other part to this. He didn't let go of the wreath. Like he was holding firm on this. I'm just going to make sure. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Once this MP's standing came forward, Wilson said, I laid the wreath in the spirit of our community and honour our fallen heroes. Wilson said that there was a general call out for someone to raise the wreath, which led to it being given to him. One attendee who was seated towards the front of the ceremony but did not wish to be identified said that they saw both Wilson and someone they later learned was Daniel's representative gripping the side of the wreath. So this sounds like it was a bit of a issue. No one let go, the attendee said. The people from the RSL were a bit taken aback. The member for RSL was also in attendance but not authorised to speak publicly about the incident, and made him and other veterans angry. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. Alrighty. So what do we got next? We have Claire O'Neill. Claire O'Neill has got an announcement, and I find this one amazing. What I find so good at this one is I think that we need to strengthen our ties with New Zealand. Particularly as we look at where their role is in our relationship with them. We haven't treated the New Zealand people as good as what we should have. So now when we have a look at this, we wonder what could we do to make it better. Claire O'Neill and the Albanese administration has got that covered. And this is what they've got to say on the matter. Okay.
I'm here in Brisbane, and behind me are hundreds of beautiful Kiwis who have made this really important decision today to take out Australian citizenship. Lots of Aussies probably won't know this, but for a long time we have treated Kiwis living in our country really, really poorly. We haven't given them proper access to citizenship, and they can't really set down roots in this country, even though many have lived here for 20 years or more. Yesterday, Anthony Albanese changed all of that. As of the 1st of July, New Zealanders living in Australia will have the same rights as Australians living in New Zealand. So this is a huge move for very many people living in Australia who want to make that big decision to become an Australian citizen, but it's also about the future of friendship between these two countries. There is no greater friend to Australia in the world than New Zealand, and today we reflect that in our public policy. So it's been amazing to be a part of this announcement. I'm here in Brisbane.
Okay, so that is a great announcement. That means finally we're giving them the same respect that they give us whenever we go to their country. And it leaves them in a better protected position, which is something that we should do. Okay, so that is a great initiative. I'm a little bit thrown off. I can't believe my freaking phone rang. Okay. Next one. Oh, I should get rid of these other ones, because what will end up happening is I will not do it properly. Okay. Oh. Okay. So Expelled Liberal is taking over. Now this is going to be an interesting tape. We're going to see how this one unfold itself, and we're going to talk about this. I thought this one was interesting because lo and behold, again, we're in this position where oh, my seat struck. I fiddle so much and it's bothering me. Okay, so this Expelled Liberal decided, well, I can run to take over the party. So let's have a look at that. Oh, geez. Let's have a look at that. Why aren't you popping up the way I want? Let's go. Expelled Victorian Liberal to take over WA party. A man who once described as treacherous by former Victorian Liberal leader Ted Baillieu was banished from the party in that state, but has been appointed the WA's Liberal Party new state director. So apparently you can get expelled from the party but still get a job within it, because, you know, conservative values. I don't know, they're weird people. In a state executive meeting held on Thursday night, Simon Morgan was appointed to the role of following the resignation of the current Director Stuart Smith. Morgan's appointment has already raised eyebrows given his colourful past. When he was a Liberals Victorian Federal Campaign Manager in 2008, Morgan ran an anonymous blog undermining the leadership, but was found out to be after an internal party inquiry. At the time, Baillieu said Morgan's actions amounted to treachery to the party. The inquiry uncovered emails where Morgan described federal MP Fran Bailey as a stupid fat bitch and subsequently expelled from the party because misogyny, because they can't help themselves. Just one second. Yep, done. Okay. The inquiry email, one senior Liberal spoke on the condition of the anonymity, questioned Morgan's appointment when the party was trying to repair its reputation. after similar language about women was uncovered in the WhatsApp message from a power broken group known as the Clan, because of course it would be the Clan. Morgan resurfaced in Western Australia, taking up roles working for former Liberal Cowan MP Luke Simpkins, WA Senator Dean Smith, before being pre-selection as the candidate for Butler in 2013 state election. The former Premier Colin Barnett defended Morgan, but he eventually withdrew from that election after his actions in Victoria came to light during the campaign. Morgan has been working the Australian Logistics Council and Roads Australia. The WA Liberal Party President Caroline De Russo sang Morgan's praises in an email sent to members Thursday night. Mr. Morgan has a high-level campaign experience and a deep understanding of the current political landscape in WA, she said. In addition to he has recent cutting-edge private sector experience, which refines his Liberal Party campaign experience and further enhances the value that he'll bring to the party organisation. We very much look forward to Simon coming on board and helping drive our efforts to prepare for the next state and federal election in 2025. WA Today understands that the state executive discussed Morgan's part as the party, but supporters of his appointment said the past indiscretion should not continue to be held against him. Because, of course, we can all just sort of forget those sorts of things that you do, you know. And we would all just be walking back with open arms in a normal job. No, fuck no. That's never going to happen. But, of course, Liberal Party, what am I thinking? Of course they're going to let him back. Of course they're going to be crazy. Of course they're going to do the very thing that they're told not to do. You know, they were told to clean up their act and make sure they had decent people. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Okay. Rupert knew he lied, but he didn't just know he lied. He knew what they were going to air. So think of it like this. He knew what he was hiring when he got Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has this amazing ability where he's been deplatformed from all three networks. He started out at CNN, then MSNBC, and then subsequently from Fox. Keep in mind, Mr. Carlson also has a job at the Daily Wire. So it's not as if he'll go away. It's more like hurrah from the big Fox platform. And don't expect them to get anyone that's going to replace him that's any higher in IQ or any better at what he does. Tucker managed to create a lot of fear and division and misinformation in his baseline. So keep that in mind as you're watching what he does. But take a listen to how it's being put out there. Can we take a second that we know that he lied? Like, that's not news. It's not great. If you're going to go with, well, he knew he was lying, but, you know, it ultimately was for the sake of his network and viewage. But you can't call yourself news then, can you? And this week I went through, you can go through the pages that you're viewing this on, as well the Stop Evil Murdoch's Monopoly page and the Murdoch Owns Our Government. And you can actively view where I show you the very moment he lost his job with CNN. They had this show called Crossfire. And Jon Stewart arrived there. Now, I've uploaded some of Jon Stewart's content before, talking about guns and other things. The guy is a comedy sketch guy. Like, this isn't normal. So you've got this comedian, right? And he's like actively just trancing him from the moment it happened. Like, you have to find this video. Jon Stewart versus Tucker Carlson on Crossfire. If you can't find it within the group, put it into your Google search. I guarantee that's 15 minutes that you wished you had seen. Also notable, that was the very last time you seen Tucker Carlson and his weird bow tie. Which is also a funny moment when Jon Stewart points out, you're a smart guy, you know how to do a bow tie. And one of the things that I found funny is that Tucker knew what he was doing. Like, even back in 2006, Jon Stewart actively said to him, you're hurting America, stop. Stop what you're doing. Stop going to Spin Alley. Stop doing this. You're harming us. So we've had, if you've been with me long enough, I've been doing this since 2009, but not full active until 2013. That two things had to happen. One, I'd lost my job and was going through job transition, and Facebook was filling in a bit of that time in between waiting for interviews. And two, my children, I'd just gotten to the point where I was getting like 8 hours sleep. So I was feeling refreshed, but at the same time low in the job market. And what ended up happening in that time is I had to have my children in a private school in a rural area. Like I said earlier, if you're in a rural area, you know you got screwed. You know you got screwed when you're looking at those schools. There's just no doubt. So I was working to try and keep my head above water. And this is when I noticed this happening. So that was the very eye-opening moment. But Americans could see this shit show long before we did. And they didn't do a damn thing to stop what Tucker was doing. So back when he worked for CNN, do not think that Tucker Carlson only did this on Fox. The original inception of Tucker was CNN. And when he did this, I found it quite interesting is that he used very similar language. Keep in mind that by the time he'd reached Fox, it had become a refined art. So as he started out in CNN, it was a bit rough around the edges and he really couldn't sell it as good. Go back to the 2006 tapes and have a look at the very different Tucker Carlson. Not just the bow tie, not just that he looks younger, but that he actively can't sell it as good. Fox sort of saw the raw material of what he was doing and they knew how to make it better for their purposes. So Bill O'Reilly was someone that he'd fundamentally took a lot of cues off. Now, Bill O'Reilly had issues. Issues with women. I want to be respectful to these women, so I want to be very careful, and I don't want to mix them up in this. Like most conservatives, Bill O'Reilly was a disgusting human and subsequently honed in on Tucker Carlson's nasty little profile. And even when he worked for MSNBC, Tucker didn't have it. So he went from CNN to MSNBC and then on to Fox. Now, the MSNBC version, when they spoke about going to Spin Alley, was a little bit better. It got, I want to say he was smarter, but I don't think it was that. I think he just got better writers. I don't think Tucker's an intelligent person that like the average IQ. I think that he's always had these amazing writers that can sell you a story. like, he doesn't ad-lib like I do. He cannot just come to you with a story and then just let you know what it is that we're going to address. No, that's not how he does it. But in this extraordinary moment, when we're looking at stuff like this, so we're looking at a Rupert Murdoch empire that did create the monster that you looked at with Tucker Carlson. It made him a monster, but the monster was already there. So they found their monsters and then they took them on and made them more monster-like. This idea that you can have like open discourse with a conservative, I do this regularly. And let me tell you how the conversation goes, right? So this is what Crossfire was. Crossfire was designed to have someone on the left and someone on the right and then debate an issue. And who could sell it better? But what they weren't telling you is what they were subsequently going from this side, from that office where they were debating, to what they call spin alley to make their side sound more polished for the politicians. So they weren't actually asking the politicians good questions. So the left would ask their questions, and then the right commentator would ask theirs. And a lot of the time, who they had on, they were spun what was going to be told to them, and then they were sort of fed lines. I'd imagine that happens here. I would never do that. I could never find myself that compromise. So I'd be like, I like you. I should just tell you what we're going to talk about. No, I would give you a basic outline and give you a small moment to prepare. But I wouldn't expect you to practice that with me, because I don't think it's in the public's best interest to do it. I think they should see the way that you're seeing me now. Just having a conversation with my audience about this stuff. So let's have a look at this. One of the most powerful media organizations effectively admit that they have broadcast the untrue information. What happens now? Now, this is something I've asked about Australia. What happens now that we know Fox lied? It's not if Fox lied or when Fox lied or the amount of Fox lies. It's the very premise that they lied. And it's the fact that we know that they did it. Just breed that party. I'm not saying that every organization that you're going to come across in terms of news and media is going to be honest with you. But they do have a deliberate responsibility to not tell you that an election is stolen when they know damn well it wasn't. They had a responsibility to say, hey, I don't think that election was stolen. I think it's BS and there's no evidence to support otherwise. But again, that would be, the common sense thing to do. Originally, all of the media tried to sort of dip their toe into it. But once things sort of got revealed and they realized that they couldn't just two sides it anymore, they had to flat out say, no, that's a lie. It's wrong. 60 court cases were lost. It's wrong. Why would I tell you that now? Because I believe you have a right to know that. Sorry, big day. Been up since 4:30. Okay. Next, this part has something interesting. Make no mistake, this is new. It is directly contrary to the purpose of journalism. And this is indeed News Corp Australia's own code of conduct, which states publications should take reasonable steps to ensure reports are accurate and not misleading. Looking at you, all news. Do not fuck with us. We know what you did to the ABC. We know what you're still doing to our ABC and SBS. We know that you put Ida but Rosetta screw with us just a little bit more because conservatives hate us as a human race. We know what you did with 7, 9, and 10. We know what you did. And we know what you're doing with every Murdoch entity. We know that we don't have any left media. Left media doesn't exist on the mainstream. What we have is we have Friendly Geordies. That is a YouTuber. So the best we have hope for is a YouTuber like this. It's kind of sad. So that's a horrible outlook. But even Tucker was too much for Rupert. So what happens when the highest grossing show is cancelled? Tucker Carlson was the moneymaker for Fox, the highest rated show ever to exist at Fox. He surpassed Bill O'Reilly pretty quickly. Have a look at why Bill O'Reilly had to leave, though. Have a look at why Janine Pirro had to leave. Or, there's another one. Maria Baltoromo. Have a look at why they had to leave. It's not by accident, it's by design. When Rupert Murdoch's minions are done playing their game, eventually the game has to end. And here's how it ends, with them being sacked, Rupert Murdoch pretending like, oh, I'm going to fix this now, and then do nothing better. That's how this is going to play out, just so you know. Okay, so, take a look at how Sleeping Giants Oz dealt with that. Andrew Bolt was like a line too far. Tucker was unable to cross. Rupert Murdoch has sent Andrew Bolt a lips firmly puckered to Bolt explain why Tucker Carlson had to go. Ultimately, it was Tuck's stance on Ukraine. Nah, BS. They've been pro-Russia, the whole lot of them. They're idiots. Why would you be for the side that's actively trying to overrun another side? Does that make sense to you? That's kind of weird, right? Ukraine has a right to its own existence. I don't know why that's being pursued as, I don't know, pro the guy that wants to kill off another country. It's weird. Tucker's weird, and they've all sort of taken this weird pro-Russia stance. That's not why Tucker lost his job. He lost his job because he actively showed in text that he was lying about what he knew with the Dominion voting system. A lot of money had to be handed over, and now there's going to be crying. Okay, now that one's done. Okay. Jim Chalmers takes down Angus Taylor. How did that shit show start? Wow, 37 seconds, and you figure out pretty quickly that you don't want to be taking any advice from Angus Taylor. It's not a wise move. Take a listen to Jim Chalmers take that point exactly.
The Shadow Treasurer thinks you should be able to deliver a service given expectations for employees and income tax before. What do you mean?
Well, the Shadow Treasurer was a cabinet minister in a government which had almost nothing to show for $1 trillion in debt. And so I don't think people take Angus Taylor very seriously when it comes to the budget. I mean, he is in many ways the poster child for the waste and rorts which define the wasted decade and the $1 trillion of Liberal debt that we inherited. And we've made it really clear that we see a substantial part of our job in this budget and otherwise is to clean up the mess that we were left.
Yep, finally turning the rhetoric back on the people that are actually responsible. We're right that we can actually now go to them and then go, no, you left $1 trillion worth of debt. You did a shitty job. The NBN's bad. The NDIS you've defunded. You haven't put in enough money for bushfire schools and hospitals. What is wrong with you? Okay, so we're not going to take any advice from Angus Taylor, the ridiculous man that he is. Okay, next up. Story time. Drag queen story time is an amazing part of fun for a bunch of kids. And I mean like little kids. You know, these are definitely like preschool age children. And they're like as old as 10. You know, they're like little kids. This isn't something any adult should be rocking up to without children. And they definitely shouldn't be protesting it. So what do you think idiots did in Melbourne when this particular topic come up? You know, these same conservatives that were fine with George Pell, but not fine with drag queen story time, that hasn't harmed any children. George Pell did, though. According to allegations, he covered up a lot of abuse. So they seem fine with one, but not the other, and the other did nothing wrong. But check out what they did. Okay.
A Melbourne Council meeting has been abandoned after protesters swarmed the event overnight. Today, Melbourne reporter Isabella Stashkovsky has the details for us. Isa, good morning to you. What sparked these dramatic scenes?
Brooke, good morning. Well, this was all in response to a planned drag story time event. This was scheduled to be next month, but protesters came to the council meeting last night when this was being discussed, and they were chanting, "Shame on you." It got pretty heated at one point. Police actually had to step in and stand between quite a large group of protesters and people who were in support of that event. Some of it was recorded. Let's take a look.
Shame on you! 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 Go away, Vince! Shame on you!
Brooke, the purpose of this event was to encourage children to see role models in different and diverse lights. There have been other similar events in Melbourne that have been cancelled.
Because, of course, my internet's going to do this.
Due to community response. At this point, this event is still going to go ahead next month at a local library.
Okay, thanks, Isa.
But this was just all stunt stuff. Because Avi Yemeni rocks up to it. Right? And Avi Yemeni is not a journalist. He's some sort of horrible human beast that appears whenever he feels like doing something horrendous. But the people turned on him pretty quickly. Check out this 24 seconds of people shouting at Avi. Avi is a wife beater because he is. That's just what he is. He can run around with his hateful rhetoric against the drag queen story time, but we're going to call him out for exactly what he is. You can't have a wife beater turn up and be outraged about drag queen story time. Weird, right?
Avi is a wife beater. Avi is a wife beater.
Please explain why drag is okay for 1 to 6 years old. Please.
Avi is a wife beater. Avi is a wife beater.
Please explain why.
Avi is a wife beater.
I think when they chanted
Now, this would have ruined any footage that the idiot had. Because you're not going to air that, are you? No, I wouldn't. But Avi being Avi thinks that makes him cool that people called him out. And, of course, he uploaded it. So, I hope the event goes very well. I hope it strikes the right chords with the community. I don't have any small children, so I have no reason to go to drag queen story time. But I should just give my support. No, it shouldn't. It's a bad idea because it'll be weird. Some weird adult rocking. Yeah, it's a weird thing to do. Okay, where are we at? Okay, good news for medication. What's happening with the government's new PBS changes? Well, turns out we have that
If
answer.
you're on multiple prescriptions, the costs of each prescription, each time you go to the pharmacist, you have to make a co-payment, it can add up to a lot of money. And what the government is saying is, based on the advice it's had, based on the advice which said this is a safe decision to make, they have said 2 months supply instead of 1 month supply. That halves the number of co-payments you have to make. It's unequivocally good for patients. The other thing that people don't think about is it means you don't have to go back to the doctor as often. And so that actually frees up doctor time, so you don't have to wait 3 days to get an appointment. You might only have to wait 1 or 2 days.
But pharmacists are going to lose out financially.
Exactly. It's about 400 million a year that comes out of pharmacy owners' profits and is saved on this. But the government has said we're going to put the money back into community pharmacy. They might do that by increasing the range of drugs that are available. They have already done that by reducing the co-payment for people on the full co-payment. So they've already put a lot of money back into community pharmacy. They say they're going to put some more in. We don't know until the budget precisely how they're going to do that.
What about the argument from pharmacists that supply is an issue?
Well, I think that's just a beat-up and complete rubbish. If you think about it, this is not going to increase the number of drugs dispensed. It's going to change how often they're dispensed. So, if you're a pharmacy and you've got 10 boxes on your shelf, that would normally do 10 prescriptions. It now does 5, and you order another 10 boxes. So it's the same number of drugs being dispensed. So it will not create a shortage at all.
Yeah, but the demand flow will change.
Yeah, exactly. Instead, your 10 boxes will do 5 prescriptions rather than 10 prescriptions, but it's the same number of prescriptions. So if it did 10 prescriptions over a 10-month period, instead it has to do 5 prescriptions over a 10-month period. So it's exactly the same number of drugs being dispensed. It's just it's a bit more lumpy.
What about the separate issue of pharmacists pushing to be able to prescribe more?
I support that, but as long as it's done in conjunction with GPs. So, if you don't want to undermine primary care through this process, but pharmacists have a lot of skills and they should be able to use them to the fullest extent. So they should be able to say, look, we might want to continue. You don't need to go back to the GP to have this prescription renewed or whatever. So it's a both and situation. They're not alternatives, but I think we should be using pharmacies to the extent we can.
And so do you think there might be a bit of quid pro quo from the government on this, with the government's allowing pharmacists to prescribe more, taking into account this latest initiative?
Yeah, well, the pharmacy prescribing is a state decision, and this one is a Commonwealth. So maybe there's some argy-bargy negotiations going on behind the scenes. But I think overall, this decision is a good one.
And how do you see the government is balancing its relationships with the doctors and the pharmacists through this?
Well, the essence of government is about making priorities. And, if you're going to make savings, what we know about the health system is every dollar of government spending is a dollar of someone's income. And so, of course, the pharmacy owners think they're going to lose money, and so they're complaining and making up arguments against it. But the government has to set priorities, and it has to say, we've only got a limited sum of money, we've got a huge budget deficit, and this is a good thing for patients, it's a good thing for health, so we ought to be going with this in the first instance.
And that's the thing, you can't use like the fake tradie idea and then do that with the pharmacy guild, which is exactly what they did. I know when they get called out for it, they're like, oh, it's going to be horrible. Most of these pharmacies are making a killing. So it's not as if they're the mum and dad pharmacies. They're mostly big brains. And you're not hearing from any small brained ones. That's not a thing. I mean, God, they're so. The guy who is in the pharmacy guild was going to be a liberal. So no, I'm not going to want to listen to a guy that deliberately lies to you. Okay, Mark Latham, double down. Now, as you know, the guy just has to say as many offensive things in the smallest time possible because he can. And because he now has 8 years in the Senate to do so. You know, because we allow them to be there 8 years doing this stuff. And that's a shame. We shouldn't be doing any of that. So let's have a look at what he did. Mark Latham appeared on Chris Smith's show at 3AW, totally on brand that he would appear alongside serial sexual harasser Chris Smith. Senator Holly Hughes popped in for a chat. Under fire for blast Hanson over tweet uproar. Mark Latham doubles down and then says, I'm assuming as a woman she doesn't understand how straight men feel about this. She hasn't contacted me and I'm not apologizing. I'm not resigning from anything. I'm not apologizing. I'm not backing down. Miss Hanson has previously said that she tried to contact Mr. Latham, but he did not return her calls. During the radio appearance, Mr. Latham continued 10 minutes to repeat the previous comments, detailing graphic homophobic descriptions of sex acts. The Daily Telegraph has decided not to publish. Now, that's good of the Daily Telegraph. They actually have some scruples about what they're publishing. Sure, but I'm sure that's because most of their viewers would be like, why would you share that? It's weird. But that's the issue here, is that he gets to say these things and he has now a platform to do so, and there's no chance in stopping him. We need to make sure that he doesn't get that much airtime. I hope Chris Smith is fired for allowing that shit show to happen, but you know, that's just me thinking out loud. Okay, our last story for the evening, and it's a doozy. Okay, so there is a social media platform called Parler that is for conservatives to just make shit up. So that's where you find out that their weird takes with the elections and everything else, just stuff that they can make up. If you're a left-winger and they know it, you can't go on it. But they're all about free speech. It's only free speech if you're saying stuff they agree with. But what happened to Parler and its little breakdown? Let's take a look. Right-wing platform Parler linked with Kanye West, Alex Jones, and Gen 6. Sold, shuts down for now. It apparently went broke. Parler, the right-wing social media platform that garnered traction after former President Donald Trump was kicked off Twitter, and followers flocked to the conservative alternative, is temporarily shutting down after it was sold to a new buyer on Friday, it's announced. Parliament Technologies Inc. said the parent company of Parler agreed to sell the company to Starboard, which in a statement said it plans to revamp the platform. He plans to integrate Parler into an existing audience other than Starboard entities like American Wine News and BizPack Review. The app will be unavailable as it undergoes a strategic assessment. It'll relaunch the company and it plans to serve marginalized or even outright censored communities. In other words, they're having their fees hurt because they're not allowed to just lie about shit. And they were told, do not do this because you're lying. You're lying about vaccines. You're lying about the election. Just lying in general. The term of acquisition will not be public, the company said. Founded in 2018, Parler became popular Twitter alternative for free speech conservatives. In other words, conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones, the former president, after he left office. Keep in mind, Alex Jones also owes a lot of money to the victims of the Sandy Hook shooting. Now, if you don't know what a disgusting human being Alex Jones is, he's the kind of guy that tells a bunch of parents of 5-year-old murder victims that it wasn't real and that it was all a fucking hoax. Yes, thank you, Alex Jones, for being that type of a scumbag. Oh my God. So he lost millions of dollars for that lie. We'll see if he actually pays it. Parler has faced some competition in recent years after Trump launched his own social media called Truth Social, which is not truthful, in 2021. And it was suggested in an investor presentation that the app would attract 81 million users by 2026, but Truth Social is nowhere near that target. Right now, the app has an estimate of 5 million users. While Trump publicly championed the app as a success, behind closed doors, he's bleeding money. Since the fall, he lost $550 million from his net worth from his social media business. Kanye West is buying right-wing social media Parler. We'll see. We will see. So in all of that, I think that that's the good part. To know that it is costing them a lot of money to promote hate and they're losing it because it's not as popular as what they thought. Well, I don't know how it would ever be popular to be saying that an election was stolen. And then when they start losing elections because people don't turn up, I don't know how they thought that was going to go great. Like in Wisconsin, they recently had some sort of judge come up and they have to vote for it. And because Republicans still believe that the election is stolen, they just didn't turn up. I can't express my delight enough at how owned they were at what they did. But they thought that they were owning the left in doing this whole elections are rigged. But they do have interesting ways of dealing with this stuff. Like they gerrymander it through, so they redraw districts on the maps. Sometimes they get through, sometimes they don't. In Florida's case, one was so bad. In Florida, so bad that they were like, no, we can't use this. And I mean, the anti-vaccine stuff was like, this is where I got to the idea of like, I got into this really morbid thing where I was like watching the Herman Cain Awards. If you haven't seen it, it's on Reddit. And that was awarded because that come up with it because conservative Herman Cain in his, I think it was like 70, he was like, no, there's no virus. It's all a hoax, Rocks up to a Trump event and subsequently passes away. Yeah, it turns out that virus thing's pretty bad, isn't it? So, subsequent of that, it was like the left saying, really, you're still going to go with the vaccines bad and masks are bad? This is really the hill you want to die on, or the shot you want to die on. This is it, So we just sit around going, okay, this guy died and he uploaded a whole heap of Trumpy sort of stuff. It was deliberate misinformation about the vaccine and masks. And he thinks it's control to be told to take better care of your health. Yeah, because that's normal. That's control for someone to go, hey, yeah, that thing that's going to save your life? Yeah, you should take that. That's control. Yeah, not the one where you're banning books or you're fucking around in women's reproductive rights. No, that's not control. But the vaccine that'll openly save your life. And they're like, hey, you probably should take this. So, yeah. All right. That's it from me tonight. I want to thank everyone for coming. For all of you that are viewing me live, please give it a like, share, and comment. If you aren't viewing it live, it's the same deal. I will love you all the same. The interest in these lives is what keeps this going. So please tell your friends about these lives, same time, same place, every week. Thank you, and hope you guys have a good evening. Bye, guys.